Hey, it's Austin Krim back on my channel where I talk and teach about web development. Svelte is my favorite JavaScript framework for building interactive UIs, and built-in transitions are one of my favorite features of Svelte. Today I want to talk about how to get started with Svelte transitions, how to use them, and maybe even how to extend them if what's built in doesn't cover all of your use cases. So right now I have a really basic Svelte project running on my computer that has one checkbox on the screen, and when I toggle it on and off, it shows this square. Obviously, this square is appearing and disappearing starkly and not animating smoothly, but that's what we're here to do. To use a Svelte transition, you're going to import from the Svelte/transition library, and it comes with a number of built-in transitions, but let's use fade to get started. Now, adding a Svelte transition is as simple as adding the transition directive on the element that you want to animate and specifying the transition function that we just imported here at the top. Now, with that done, we've pretty much done our job. The div animates in and out smoothly with this fade animation that we specified. Now, obviously, that's the simplest use case, and we can get more complex from there. One other thing you can do is specify separate animations for whether an element is entering or leaving the screen. So in this case, I've specified the in directive instead of the transition directive, and that will fade when the element comes in, but apply no transition when the element is leaving the screen. Let's import a different transition and apply it for the out directive. Let's do slide. So down here on my element, I'll just say out slide, and it should set us up out of the box. There it goes. Now, these built-in functions are great for just getting going, but if you wanted to tweak or fine-tune what they're doing, you can actually pass parameters to the transition function. To illustrate that, let's use yet a different transition function called fly. Now, if we specify fly without any parameters, we'll show that it's not that much different from fade. That's because fly requires you to pass an object of parameters to tell it where to fly from. So this syntax is simply the double curly braces are specifying we're going to do a dynamic expression inside the first set, and then the second set is saying that we're going to pass an object literal. So fly takes an x or a y parameter to specify where the element should fly from and where it should fly to. So let's try x200 and see what that looks like. Very cool. So x is telling it's going to come from the side, and it's going to start somewhere like 200 pixels off where the element is supposed to end up. And similarly from y, it should come from the bottom, like so. Now, all transition functions also accept a couple of other parameters, one of them being duration. Duration accepts a number in milliseconds, I believe, that tells Svelte how long to take in doing the animation. So if we say 100 milliseconds, that's going to be pretty quick. It's going to zoom right up from the bottom. Or we could say 10,000 milliseconds, and it's going to take its sweet time coming up. With the duration specified as 10 seconds here, it gives me another opportunity to highlight something cool about Svelte transitions, is that they are smoothly reversible. So in our case, if we start the box flying off the screen, and in the middle we change our mind, we can flip the box and it will just restart from wherever the box is currently at.
Yet another parameter you'll find yourself using with Svelte transitions is the easing parameter. Now, you'll be familiar with easing if you've done work with CSS transitions or animations, where you'll specify something like ease in or ease out, or maybe even a custom cubic Bezier curve. But Svelte ships with a large number of built-in easing functions that we can simply import and use with our Svelte transitions. So we're going to import our easing functions from the Svelte/easing package. And if I bring up autocomplete, you'll see that we have a large number of options to choose from. I'm going to grab elastic out. That's one of my favorites. And we'll just specify that we want to use the elastic out easing function right there. Let's take our duration down to something more reasonable, like 200 milliseconds, and I'll go ahead and save. And if we go ahead and click our box now, we see we get kind of a fun effect as the box jumps up. It looks like it kind of moves past where it's going to end up and then bounces back, almost simulating a kind of a spring physics type animation. That's really cool. You can get that just out of the box with the Svelte easing package. So the last thing I wanted to talk about are custom Svelte transitions. As you can see, Svelte comes with a lot out of the box already, but if there's ever something that you want to do that doesn't quite fit into any of the transitions that are provided, you can write your own custom transition function. Let's take a look at how to do that real quick. So first, let's delete our existing transition declaration and instead write in the name of our new custom transition. Now you can name your custom transitions whatever you want. What they do is they correspond with the name of a function. So here we have our function named custom, which means it's going to hook up down here with the transition named custom. Now what your transition function needs to do is return an object with a CSS property on it. There are a few other parameters you can return here, and you can read all the details in the Svelte documentation about what's possible. What the CSS property is, it's going to be a function that returns a string of actual CSS that represents your transition. To illustrate that we have this wired up correctly, let's just do something really simple here and give it a background of tomato while we're transitioning. Let's make sure that we have that wired up there. So you can see that as we're transitioning, the background gets set to tomato, which is represented by the CSS string that we have here. Obviously, that's not a very exciting transition, so let's do something a bit more dynamic. Now, to make our CSS string behave a little bit more dynamically, we actually get a couple of parameters provided to our CSS string. Now, the Svelte docs call these arguments t and u. I don't know if there's any significance to them, but what t does is it's a number that smoothly moves from 0 to 1 as our element is transitioning in, and then back from 1 to 0 as the element is transitioning out. And the parameter u does the inverse of that. So it starts at 1 and goes to 0 while your element is transitioning in, and then goes back to 1 as your element transitions out. That sounds a little bit weird, and you might not be able to picture it very well in your head, but it'll become a little bit more intuitive once we start to use them. So let's illustrate that point by doing a transform translate x. And let's use one of our arguments. So let's just start by using t, and then we'll have to remember to append some kind of pixel value here at the end. So if I save this and we run, you might have been able to see it if you zoomed in, but what's actually happening is it's transforming our element 1 pixel to the right as we're transitioning in and out. So to magnify that effect a little bit, let's multiply this by 200 just to make it really obvious what's happening. So as we transition in, like I said, that t variable goes from 0 to 1. So we'll actually see as we transition in, our box moves to the right, and then as we transition out, it starts from the right and moves back to the original position. So that's maybe not quite what you want, but that illustrates the need to have both t and u. So if we switch this to u, it starts translated 200 pixels to the right, and as it transitions in, it comes back to its original position and then moves back. So I hope that was a little bit useful to understand what's happening with t and u, because I know that was really confusing when I first started writing custom transitions. But now that we have this set up and we understand what our parameters are, we can start to do all sorts of fun things. So maybe let's keep this transform going, and let's add another. Let's say we want to scale. Let's do a scale of t. See what that looks like. Okay, so we have kind of a growing thing going on. So it's moving and shrinking at the same time. And you can continue to experiment and explore that even more. You can also pass parameters to your custom transitions in the same way that we did with our other functions. You can pass whatever you want, but if we wanted to pass maybe some kind of easing, let's pass that same elastic out easing function that we were using before. And to get those into our function, we need to add a couple of arguments here,
custom transitions always receive the actual element that they're being used on as the first parameter, and then any parameters as the second parameter. And then we can just return an easing property here as well. Let's see what that looks like. I hope you enjoyed this video about Svelte transitions. If you'd like to see more content about Svelte, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Other than that, have a great day.